Hello once again and welcome to Herd Immunity News. I'm Marcus Botzer. Today I've got an absolutely fascinating guest. I've got Crypto Rich. Crypto Rich is a social media influencer. He's also the man to speak to about many things, but cryptocurrency, and that's why we've got him on today. But without further ado, how are you, Rich?
I'm very well, Mark. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Now, let's talk about cryptocurrency if we can. Now, the government have said that this is dangerous. They've
Yes.
said that it's volatile. They don't recognize its intrinsic value, or they don't recognize its ability to be sustainable. What are your views on cryptocurrency, and can you share them with us, please?
Sure. Well, I think the last few years have really shown us and proven and demonstrated that we should believe absolutely everything the government says and not question it in any way whatsoever, because they only have our interests at heart. They know my health better than I do myself, despite both my parents being homeopaths, and they know what's better for me in terms of my health, right? So I should just go along with whatever they say and roll up my sleeves, right? So that's my cheeky answer to that.
Okay. Okay. Yes. I mean, you're not suggesting for a second, of course, that the government would ever lie to us or do anything that
Never.
would put us in harm's way with experimental treatments. But on the cryptocurrency, if I can just look at the two biggies, Bitcoin, even
Yeah.
if people don't have any cryptocurrency themselves, and it is still quite a small percentage, although it is a growing percentage of the public around the world that have cryptocurrency. If we look at the Bitcoin, now Bitcoin has fluctuated quite a lot, but in the last 12 months and the year to date, I think we're seeing figures around about 68% growth over the last 12 months. I think it's about 15%. Ether has gone up as well. It's gone up about 46%. But over the last 12 months, it's down 8.8%. Would you still recommend people have a little look at buying crypto?
Here's what I would recommend is people go and find out about it.
Right.
They should educate themselves and learn more. And, go to Odyssey and Rumble and YouTube if you have to, and subscribe to my channel, cryptorich.odyssey, bit.ly
Yes.
slash cryptorich odyssey, right? I cover crypto and other stuff, right? But if I can take it back a little bit, because people have all sorts of ideas about Bitcoin and about cryptos in general. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's going to use up all the available energy on the planet and we'll be left shivering and cold. It's going to cause climate change and then we're all going to boil. We're going to vaporize. Bitcoin will vaporize us because of the heat it generates, right? It's only ever used by criminals. There's nothing tangible about it, right? So in life, about anything, we already always have sets of ideas about things. And it's useful to actually, I think, to dig in and examine, well, is that true? Is that true? Who's saying that? Who's saying that? Who's saying that?
Mm.
So if I can take it back to money versus currency.
Okay.
So money is used as an exchange of value. So, um I'm a farmer. I grow some potatoes and you're a cobbler and I need some shoes. And I can come to you and I can say, listen, here's a sack of potatoes. Will you make me some of your finest handmade shoes? And you say, okay. But then my wife also needs shoes. So I come back the following week with a sack of potatoes for shoes for my wife. And say, sorry, Rich, I've already got a sack of potatoes. What am I going to do with two sacks of potatoes?
Mm.
What money represents is my effort, my energy, my labor, my time. And it's a way of tokenizing that energy, labor, and time. So in a simple society, we can work on barter, but in a complex society like this, we can't. We need something that we can use for exchanging value. And people have traditionally used gold and silver. And there's a few other qualities of money. So one is an exchange of value as a medium of exchange. The other, it's got to be fungible, which means it's got to be the same as another. So for example, one can of Coke is the same as another can of Coke. It's fungible. 1 ounce of gold, 99% gold, is the same as any other 99% of gold. A bead or a shell, cowrie shell, isn't the same as another cowrie shell. It's not fungible. It might be bigger or smaller or larger or have different qualities or different color. So money, the £5 in your pocket is the same as another £5 note. That's what fungibility means. So gold and silver are fungible, and so is Bitcoin. All these characteristics apply to Bitcoin. Then also, it's got to be divisible. So you've got to be able to divide. You can divide gold, you can divide silver, and then it's got to be portable. So you're going to be able to carry it around. You can carry gold, silver around, right? And Bitcoin's even more portable. And it's got to be durable. There was a state, I think it was Kentucky, where they were using tobacco leaves for money, for value exchange. But what happened with the tobacco leaves is they would degrade. They try and break up, right? So you're losing money. And what happened with the tobacco is that it's also got to be scarce. You're going to have limited supply, which is why gold is more valuable than silver, which is why we don't use leaves. Leaves are so abundant, they're worthless, because you increase the supply of something, it has no value, right? So gold, silver have all these qualities. And what happened with the tobacco when they were using the tobacco leaf as money is people would start growing their own tobacco. Well, that would inflate the supply. And then people would start attacking other people's tobacco farms. Because if you start growing tobacco, then my tobacco is going to be worth less. So I'll attack your farms. So then people started warehousing the tobacco, and they'd get certificates. And they'd use the certificates to transfer value. So here's a certificate for a kilo of tobacco. You take that, I take that, you give me the shoes, and then you can go and redeem against the tobacco in the warehouse. But of course, before it degrades, because it's not durable. But the same thing happened with gold. People would use gold to exchange value, but at some point, the gold dealers would say, okay, we'll keep the gold and give you a certificate. So then I'd give you a certificate for gold for your shoes, and you could go and redeem the gold.
Fractional reserve banking.
Well, the gold dealers worked out only 10% of the gold was ever redeemed.
Yeah, that's right.
Then they started lending out, creating more certificates than they had. I mean, I can't resist that temptation. I got 10 kilos of gold. Well, I'll print out certificates for 100 kilos of gold and I'll make more money.
Absolutely.
So that's fractional reserve banking. That gave rise to that. Now, what we have in our pockets is currency. It's not money.
Yes.
But it's the derivative. It's the certificates, but it's not backed by anything. It's not redeemable. And if you look in your notes, it says, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of. Well, pay the bearer what? What are you going to pay? It's an IOU. So that's currency. All the pound notes, dollars and euros are all currency because they're not backed by anything. But gold, silver, and Bitcoin are the thing itself.
So you're putting Bitcoin into the same category as gold and silver.
Bitcoin is durable.
Right.
It's fungible. It's portable, way more portable than gold and silver. It's scarce in supply. There can be no more than 21 million ever. The code for Bitcoin cannot be hacked. You cannot produce more Bitcoin. Just like you can't magic more gold. You can't magic more silver. And it's used as a medium of exchange, increasingly so.
As legal tender in the UK?
Well, not as legal tender, but people are using it anyway. I mean, you can transact with it.
Yeah, so we could do that today if we wanted to. If you want to accept, if I'm selling your car, you could accept it as a Bitcoin transaction.
Between you and I, we can make that arrangement.
And that's the beauty of it. Or that's if I'm jumping to one side, I don't have a dog in the fight, but I'm curious about it. But because of the digital banking that's coming in, the CBDR that's coming in, a lot of people are worried that the governments will be able to hold their cash, and they have done, as we've seen in Canada.
Yeah, and also with Nigel Farage and many others recently in the war on cash, right? So the other thing about Bitcoin, gold, and silver is that they are decentralized forms of money. Nobody owns them or controls them. And we can do what called peer-to-peer transactions. Now, with gold and silver, you and I need to be together in the same room, right? Sure. Okay, I will buy your car and you'll say, sure, Rich, and I'll sell it to you for this many ounces of gold or this many ounces of silver. That's between us. It's our agreement.
Sure.
Bitcoin, we can do that. And there's no bank in the middle to censor that transaction, to take their cut of that transaction. to control that transaction in any way, like what happened with Nigel Farage and many, many others. So the magic of Bitcoin, and it was invented by a guy as a reaction to 2008 banking crisis, it takes away banks and central and government's monopoly on value creation and money creation and value transfer.
And it takes HMRC out the equation completely. Now, but what would we need as party A? I'm the seller, you're the buyer. What would we need to complete that transaction if we're doing it via Bitcoin, please, Rich?
Well, it's a little bit, this is where some of the practices are a little bit esoteric.
Okay.
It's, gold and silver is pretty simple to understand. It's a physical thing. Put it in your wallet, hide it somewhere, put it in a bank vault if you must, although I don't recommend that. But anyway, right? Or put it in a safety vault. You can do that. It's simple to understand. Bitcoin is a whole new paradigm for money. And because it's a new paradigm, it's like I got to learn a new language. I've got to learn how to, it's a new set of tools. Like if I were to work as a car mechanic, I've got to learn the bits of a car and how a car works and how to fix it, right? So some of this language is going to get esoteric, which is why I recommend people go and inquire and investigate. Go check it out.
Check out your site.
Yeah. So if I draw a parallel, say with an email account, that's a whole new paradigm for communication. The internet's a whole new paradigm for communication.
Yeah.
So I have a public email address, and then I have a password. I give out the public email address and people can send me emails. The password I keep to myself because otherwise people can access my account. It's the parallel with Bitcoin. I have a public Bitcoin address and I have a private passphrase, which can take many different structures and forms, right? But I must keep that secure and I must keep that offline. And that's the access to the Bitcoin wallet. So I would give you my public Bitcoin address.
Right.
You would send it to that address. And usually within about 30 minutes, the Bitcoin will have landed without anybody in between taking a cut, except for this, the miners take a small transaction fee. Now the miners are really refers to computer programs that run the Bitcoin code and keep it updated. And it's fully decentralized and it can't be captured because like BitTorrent, it's decentralized. There's no one point of control.
And myself as the seller can see that transaction's gone through if I look at my wallet. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and you can look on websites where they have what's called a blockchain explorer, which has all the transactions. So you can see there's the address. And you can actually, before the Bitcoin has landed in my wallet, you can send me the transaction ID, which is a link to the blockchain. And I can see, oh, it's coming.
But the DVLA will still need to have the paperwork as the new holder. And that amount, it could put down £1 if we wanted to.
Yeah, if we wanted to. Yeah. Between us, right? Although in Britain, according to HMRC regulations, every cryptocurrency transaction is a taxable event. Right. So I'm just letting you know what the rules are. And by the way, Mark, if I can give a little plug, I'm doing
please plug away.
Videos with regards to the low traffic networks and the ultra ULEZ schemes and the 15-minute cities that are being rolled out in England and Scotland and elsewhere. And it's actually illegal for people to demand payment of you for those fines, and it's illegal for us to pay them. And it's the same deal for any tax. And if people want to go and check out, there's a 16-minute video that I did, which explains that, which goes on to the longer in-depth video. And I can give you the link for that. And you can post it on this.
We'll provide all the links. We'll provide all the links after at the base of we'll do it throughout this video, Rich, and we'll also do it at the end when we post on Twitter. That's interesting.
So the thing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is it's part of this movement for decentralization, because what we're dealing with is the incredible centralization of wealth and power at our expense.
Yeah.
We can't capture Bitcoin. And there are other cryptocurrencies, privacy coins, which are even more liberating.
Well, what people should also recognize is that in 2021, the Bank of England recognizes bail-ins. And these are the type of bail-ins that we saw in Cyprus in 2013, where the government actually helped themselves to people's personal accounts.
That's right.
Not
That's right.
everybody knows it.
They can still do that.
Yes.
And when the CBDCs come in, which by the way will fail, they will fail.
Mm.
And I'm saying they will fail. And there's plenty of indicators to suggest they will fail, all sorts of reasons. But in the meantime, they're going to do a lot of damage. And I think one of the reasons why they will fail is because you've got CBDCs and a growing, awakening population,
Yes.
and people learning more and more about cryptocurrencies and how they're the antidote to CBDCs. In particular, and I'm going to get a bit more specialized here, we don't have to go into this, in particular, the privacy cryptos like Pirate Chain and Monero. And I did a video about Pirate Chain being an antidote to CBDCs, because here's the deal with cash, why cash is so important. You and I meet up, right?
Yeah.
You give me 20 quid. It's just between you and me. Nobody knows. It's cash transaction. It's just you and I exchanging time and energy, right?
Yes.
Same deal with Pirate Chain. Nobody knows but you and I.
Mm.
There's no data to analyze on the blockchain, nothing. No government can go and examine it, do data analytics, track where the money goes. It leaves us free. And because it's a cryptocurrency, we can do it over distances.
Absolutely. And I mentioned beforehand that one of the government's warnings to us all, the good, honest governments that we have in this country, is that this is being used for nefarious means. This is being used for
Yes.
drug dealing. But what we saw was Nigel was kicked out his bank account, and 350,000 other people were kicked out their bank accounts as part of his expose on the NatWest Coots scandal. Meanwhile, we have criminal terrorists still having their bank accounts. We have rapists, we have murderers, we have drug dealers. All these people still have bank accounts. So it's
Yep.
absolute garbage to suggest that these cryptocurrencies are all being used by drug dealers and fraudsters.
Well, just on that, Mark, drug dealers will use whatever he can get access to, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and HSBC got fined, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars for running drugs for Mexican drug cartels a few years back, right?
Yeah.
So
Funny that.
drug dealers will do whatever they want, right? They'll use gold, they'll use silver, they use Bitcoin, they'll use cash, they'll use Pirate Chain. They're going to do whatever they can.
Yeah.
When they end up in prison, they use cigarettes or tins
Barber
of mackerel,
shops, car
right?
washes.
Yeah. The thing about the government is they have a monopoly on gangsterism, and they don't want us encroaching on their turf. Now, if I can say something, I'm going to say something about Bitcoin, what it can't do. But before that, I want to preface it with something about tax. The UK government is breaking the law. It's breaking its own laws. It is illegal, according to a couple of pieces of legislation passed in 2000, it is illegal to provide funding for terrorism and or acts of genocide. And these two statutes, I can't remember the details, they're in the video interviews that I did with Chris Coverdale. They said that they define genocide as where people are being killed because of their religion, their ethnicity, and their nationality. And it's illegal to fund genocide. And the British government isn't excluded from that legislation. So then by sending weaponry to Ukraine for the killing of Ukrainians and Russians,
Yes.
our government is breaking its own law. By supporting Saudi Arabia in its genocide of the Yemenis by providing logistical information and arms, the UK government is breaking the law. And then we cannot fund genocide. We are breaking the law. And by paying our taxes and the LTNs and the ULEZ fines, we are supporting an agency that's engaging in genocide. Plus, some could argue it's been engaging in genocide, because I know you want this on YouTube.
Sure.
Right?
Well,
By other means, using medical means, although we know that
yeah.
it was safe and effective. Safe and effective, that's true, it's safe and effective. Just like Jimmy Dore says on all his YouTube videos, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's what governments have done and will continue to do ever since the Vietnam War. And in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. It was no longer redeemable against gold. because Charles de Gaulle called him out on it, said
Mm.
you don't have gold to back those dollars that you're printing, because they were printing extra dollars to mine metals, to make munitions, to send across the world and drop on Vietnamese people. And what our governments are doing are printing pounds and dollars and euros to mine metals, to make munitions, to send across the world to drop on people. They can't do that with Bitcoin. You can't print more Bitcoin. They want Bitcoin to pay for armaments and everything.
Mm.
They have to go to the market. And if they start buying Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin, it just gets more expensive because it's limited in supply.
Are there any governments in the world who recognize Bitcoin as a valid currency?
There are governments. I don't have the list to hand. I
Okay.
do know that Argentina, not Bitcoin, the Argentinian agricultural department, one of their divisions, used a particular cryptocurrency called Morpheus Network from a project Morpheus Network, the MNW token, to set. Actually, no, they used Bitcoin. They used Bitcoin for an international transaction.
Mm. Okay.
So they have done that. There are companies that are using that. There are family funds that are investing in Bitcoin. And then BlackRock, that incredibly benevolent,
Wow. Oh,
kind, largest money manager in the world. They
yes.
want to invest in Bitcoin. Obviously, well, like we said earlier, gangsters will
The
go.
environmental social governance people that are there for you and your family.
Yeah, yeah. To
Yeah.
keep, we must lock ourselves down, otherwise we'll all boil to death. But can I just address the whole thing about Bitcoin?
Please.
Bitcoin's going to destroy the planet because of all the energy that it's used up. Complete and utter nonsense.
Mm.
If I run a Bitcoin set of Bitcoin miners called a Bitcoin mining farm, I'm going to go to where the electricity is cheapest. So I'll go to Russia, and I was actually connected with a Bitcoin mining farm that used hydroelectric power in Russia. It's renewable. Or you go to Texas where there's solar energy. You just want to use the cheapest energy. Or in Iran, I think it's Iran, they're using the gas that gets flared and burnt up to
Mm.
so they're using surplus or renewable energy because from a business point of view, it makes sense to use cheap surplus energy.
Absolutely.
Now, but the mainstream media will occasionally have an article about how much energy Bitcoin uses because of the mining transactions, right? Which is really the energy used by thousands of computers all over the world running themselves. Well, there are far more computers than running stuff anyway than there are running Bitcoin miners. And then nobody ever talks about how come Just Stop Oil. By the way, Mark, I've reached out to Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion and
Have
groups
you?
of that ilk and have a conversation with them about climate change. I'll talk to anybody, right?
Right.
So, but
I'd
anyway,
like to see
how
that
come?
actually. I'd like to see that. That'd be
Yeah,
a nice,
none of
nice
none of them have responded. The climate change deniers have, but
yeah.
the climate change cultists,
Mm.
they haven't. But anyway, how come Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion don't talk about the environmental damage done by the boom and bust cycles created by the fiat currency cycle, but also by governments printing money in order to mine metals, to make munitions, to fly in jet fuel across the world and drop on people? Surely that's way more damaging.
Course. Of course, these people don't care about life. They're anti-human. They care
Yeah,
more about stopping life. They care more about a political agenda which is based on a communist totalitarian control of our country, our lives, our children's lives, and our future. And it's
yeah.
pathetic. And the game is up, basically, for anybody that's got half a brain cell on active duty. And I'm not just saying that to be sensational, Rich. If people can think critically and see that they're actually blocking roads, ambulances, emergency services, people getting to work with all sorts of mental health conditions, stuck in traffic in London or wherever else it may be, but they don't see them outside the Chinese embassy, right? They don't see them blocking HS2 and historic woodland that are being culled and destroyed. They don't even
They don't
see
see
them
them
down, don't even see them down on the coast,
or at
blocking
arms
a
fairs.
mass wave of illegal migrants coming into the country because the more people we have, the higher the carbon footprint of the UK will go up. So they're
Don't
not
see
interested.
don't see them at arms fairs. And just on
No,
this, Mark, we've gone off this, right? But
that's well.
people need to know that before we started recording, we were chatting all sorts of stuff
We were.
anyway.
It's open-ended. This is free speech.
Okay, well, let me say this then, right? That I joined the anti-apartheid movement when I was 18, when I learned about pass laws.
Okay.
And hell no, if I'm going to live in a pass law country in the UK with the LTNs and the ULEZ, right? Digital passes. No, 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 no.
Sure.
I was also involved in the miners' strike. When
Mhm.
Thatcher was in power, I
Wow.
supported the miners there. I was also involved in the anti-war campaign. I'd go on demonstrations when they were killing people in Iraq,
Sure.
right? And then the anti-poll tax demo. I was involved in
Wow.
the anti-poll tax movement. And lately, the freedom movement against lockdowns and stuff, right? So that we can be free. Government doesn't tell me whether I get to visit my mother-in-law or not. No,
Indeed.
we'll work that out. You just carry on,
Indeed.
right? Making decent roads, right?
Yeah,
We'll work
indeed.
that out as a family, right?
Yes.
So I've been involved in grassroots campaigns. Just Stop Oil,
Hmm.
not a grassroots campaign. And here's how I can tell. One is I've heard all this stuff about all the funding that they get.
Dale Vince.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know, right? But
Yeah.
there's other tells. They're not interested in building a mass movement. They're not interested in having conversations with people
No.
to say, look, I'm on board and here's why. Because I remember at the when I was in the anti-apartheid movement in a picket outside the South African embassy, we talked to anybody and everybody. I would talk to white South Africans who were telling me how terrible black Africans are, and I would still engage with them and talk to them because you got to win them over to build a mass movement. They're not interested in a mass movement. They're interested in creating friction, just like everything else that's part of the Great Reset, the sexualization of children, the trans agenda, the whole climate change nonsense. It's all designed to the mass wave of illegal immigrants.
Yes.
All designed to create friction, to have us fighting each other, to destroy family, destroy religion, destroy our independent livelihoods, and centralize power. And Bitcoin, and in particular the privacy cryptocurrencies, are part of the antidote to that. We must decentralize.
Absolutely. Well, the economy is being shafted by, then this is managed decline. There's absolutely no doubt about that, Rich, that Richie Sunak himself masterminded the decline when we borrowed an extra 500 billion for the insanity of locking healthy people down for a virus that was at serious risk to 0.1% of the population. And then this man, to add to the story, which everybody should know now, but we should never forget, gets beaten in a head-to-head against the clueless, hapless Liz Truss. Now, Liz Truss won fair and square and should still be the Prime Minister. And everyone in the country should be asking, why did she resign after only 44 days? Because the so-called markets, which are the banks, basically said her plan was clueless. Now, as it turns out, the actual borrowing rates, the gilt yield percentage, is higher now. The borrowing rates are actually higher now than when Truss was called a clown, insane. Her and Kwasi Kwarteng made a total fudge off it at the time, but they had the right idea, but it was just at the wrong time. So everything that you're saying is true.
It was a takedown by the Bank of England and by
It
the
was.
WEF. It was absolute takedown by them, right? Because one of the things that she wanted to do, which I did agree with, and by the way, you should know my preferred mode of transport is cycling. I have solar panels and drive a Prius,
You
right?
greenie.
Yeah, and I have voted green, right? But I won't be doing that again.
Oh dear. Well, we're a broad church here.
Well, I learn. You live and learn, right?
Yes, you do.
To access Britain's hydrocarbon wealth, that's what we need to do. Otherwise, we are going to freeze, and more elderly people are going to die, which is what the WEF want. And incidentally, I was in Africa last week for a cryptocurrency project that were kind enough to send me out there. I was in Sierra Leone, and I spoke to this Ghanaian management consultant, and I shared with her this idea that I have, right? And she completely agrees with me. Europe has no natural resources. It has no commodity collateral. It's a net importer of hydrocarbons. It's a net importer of energy. It has a tradition and legacy of imperialism, of telling people what's good for them, the rest of the world, what's good for them, and how to live their lives. In the 18th and 19th century, it was Christianity that they exported at the point of a gun across South America, the Americas, Africa, Asia, for the good of those savages. Christianity for your own good, and they plundered the resources. The climate change agenda is 21st century European imperialism redux. No development for you. No hydrocarbons for you in Tanzania. No hydrocarbons for you in Sierra Leone.
That's a big part of the
For your
agenda.
own good.
Yeah,
We know what's good for you.
that is a big part of the agenda. And Nicola Sturgeon, I should wash my mouth out. Nicola Sturgeon actually said last year that we export, and I say we as in the United Kingdom, export 80% of our oil from the North Sea. That's actually exported, but we're buying in other people's resources. A lot of people in this country, and I'm one of them, like to see the energy mix, where we use a combination of renewables and reliables that come from fossil fuels, gas, we look at nuclear, and we have a selection of energy to use as and when is necessary, rather than just going down this maniacal path of net zero, which not only cripples overseas developing economies, which you're touching on and is correct, but it's also doing the same in the United Kingdom and the United States. We've seen what Biden's done. He's crippled the United States as far as energy is concerned. It's probably without any doubt now that he blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And he's on record of actually saying that when he was questioned about it. He was with Mr. Schultz, the German premier, and he was actually asked what he was going to do. Don't know if you've seen the interview, but we'll certainly repost it, where he's asked what he's going to do, how he's going to stop Nord Stream 2. And he goes, oh, we have ways, we have means, old Sleepy Joe. So he blew it up. But we need to be energy independent in this country, don't we?
Yeah, and money dependent. And from my examination of renewable energy and stuff, it ain't going to work. It's not viable on a large scale. It just isn't. And one of the reasons why it's not viable is there isn't enough affordable silver for solar panels, for electric vehicles. There just isn't. And there's no substitute for silver in terms of electroconductivity. There just isn't. There's no substitute for silver in terms of reflective ability. There just isn't. And then now, if we start taking up more and more solar panels, what's it going to do to the price of silver? It's going to drive the price of silver through the roof, destroy the dollar, upset the gold and dollar market, destroy the dollar even further. Gold will go through the roof, and so will Bitcoin.
So buy silver.
Gold, silver, Bitcoin.
Buy silver, definitely. Gold, silver, Bitcoin. They are three definitely fantastic points.
Yeah, go investigate Bitcoin and then start taking a look at some of the privacy cryptos, in particular Pirate Chain. I am one of the volunteer team at Pirate Chain, but also Monero, which is the most established one, because then we preserve our privacy. No privacy, no freedom.
Absolutely. Look, Rich, you've been an amazing, amazing guest. I knew you would be. I'm going to give you the last 5 to 10 minutes just to have the floor completely to talk about anything that you want to talk about that we haven't covered. This is what our channels are meant to do. Our channels are meant to invite guests on, give them the floor, and you can talk about absolutely anything you want to, because we had some interesting talks before came on. So for the last 5-10 minutes, even if you want to open the door to our next video, for which hopefully won't be that far in the future, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, one is I'd love people to come and follow me on Twitter, CryptoRichYT, and join my Telegram announcement channel, and bit.ly/CryptoRich Odyssey, because I post material there that's far too spicy for YouTube. But one of the things we talked about is before we started recording is I'm a social worker. I'm a child protection social worker. I've got over 11 years frontline child protection experience as a qualified social worker, and the stuff I've dealt with will make your heart weep. And my oldest son is going to be 19 in a couple of weeks' time. My daughter's going to be 16 in October. They've never, ever been to school. We home educated them, more particularly, we unschooled them, which means we just let them play. We just let them play. We just let them play. And I've always been a passionate advocate for home education ever since I came across it, right? But now, oh my God, you have to, because what they're rolling out is the sexualization of children. They are abusing we have, there is the phrase in social work called normative abuse, where there's an abusive practice that just becomes normalized. So we could say foot binding in China, normative abuse. Female genital mutilation in certain cultures. It's just part of the culture, but it's normative abuse that's just become normalized. I would say, my opinion is not co-sleeping, not putting your infants in bed next to mummy and or daddy. Put him in a cot at the other end of the house or something. That's normative abuse. Formula milk is normative abuse because it impairs the development of the child. You know, brain doesn't get to grow. They have all sorts of health issues. What's being rolled out now in schools at the behest of the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and the WEF is the sexualization of children, where in Wales, children as young as 6 years old are being taught how to self-stimulate. Now, the risk with that is it messes up the kid, completely messes them up. They're sexualized. Kid learns that in class, goes home, visits that play in all innocence upon their younger sibling or their older sibling or on the kid next door. And now you've got two kids with sexualized play. The parents are wondering what's going on, looking suspiciously at the dad who didn't do anything. And no one's going to believe him, because who believes a potential pedophile?
Yeah.
Right? Or a possible pedophile. And now you've got the families stressed and frayed by the state bringing sexualized children into that home, sexualizing that home's children. And in England, I think it's already the case in Scotland, but in Wales, in England, as of September this year, you're not going to be able to take your kids out of those classes if you've got any sort of ethical or religious or common sense objections to having your children sexualized. You will lose that right. Get your kids out of school. They belong to you. My kids belong to me, not the school, not the teachers, not the state. So I would advise people to go check into home education. It's way easier than people think. You don't have to teach them. My son learned mathematics by playing Monopoly, for crying out, right?
Sure. The old classic.
That's right. And I read to them loads and loads and loads and loads. And when he was 8, he said he was ready to read. And we said, okay, we'll choose a book you love. He chose Rudyard Kipling's original Jungle Book, because I wouldn't read them, the Disney rubbish. And it's such a great book. And it was difficult, but he chose it. He wanted to. It was all intrinsic. And that's the magic of home education. Preserves the family, preserves family culture and religion, because we are under assault. They are attacking us from all sides. And we've got to do what we can to protect ourselves and take care of ourselves and each other.
That's amazing stuff. That's powerful stuff, but you're also right over the target. And you've opened up a porthole completely to the next video and the next time you come on. But all that remains for me to do is thank Crypto Rich so very, very much for coming on. He's been an amazing guest on Herd Immunity News. We will leave all the links to his fantastic sites, which link into his videos and his other projects that he's got going on. His Twitter account is amazing. Don't miss it. I know he's going to be putting more and more of his videos and content on Twitter so more people can get to see it. But for now, all that remains for me to say is, Crypto Rich, thank you very much for coming on to Herd Immunity News.
Mark, thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Thank you.